I'll get you started tonight. So about 5 years ago, there was a demonstration and a hands-on by Ali Alvasara at our shop. And he was, the hands-on class was doing the platter, but he also taught the, what he called the Jerusalem stone technique. And I have used this thing over and over on several projects, not necessarily all platters, but it's a great little technique that I learned. I was really proud of this platter when I was done until I held it up to the light. And I don't know if you can see it, but I'm a little thin in the middle, so I can see light through it. I don't know, but that was the only thing that I was disappointed in, and it was a great demo. And like I say, I took that technique that I learned and have carried it into several different projects, so it was very valuable to me.
I moved it. I did it. Oh, my fault. Okay. This is Semi from Mike Thomas. Semi. The Blue X. The Blue X. Blue X. Blue X. This is Semi from Mike Thomas, and Semi from my first class in box making. I wanted to take a Semi from the auction we had, or the sale we had, so I wanted to put one of these glass pieces in. So I talked it over with Anthony, and I worked really hard on this, and I was focused on it, and I got everything to fit right, and I took it off the lathe. Now it's not fitting. So I think the wood was warm, or there was cracks in it. It was bending, but I'm still working on it. And it is a box with a lid with the glass through it.
Right spot. Okay. I saw this and I made a bowl within a bowl, kind of out of a piece of walnut. But as I went in for the centering section, I found out this piece had some of that wind shake. So it has some grain in here that just will not sand or do anything with it. And then I textured the bottom.
So it's fall, so it's time for pumpkins. So I saw a picture a long time ago of these weathered pumpkins out of some different wood. And so I'd been looking for weathered wood to try and make these for a long time. And at my in-laws' house, they had some old hedge fence posts that probably are well over 100 years old to have that kind of weathering. There's also some charring from burning fields on them. So I grabbed them up and made several sets of these pumpkins for my family. So there you go.
Mine's made out of hedge too. Mine's an old fence post. This is actually, I think, the third one of these ever made. And I messed this one up. The other two are gone, but I messed this one up. I didn't chase a good thread, and this lid was, you could move it around. The cracks were too big. I got greedy, tried to make the space too big. And so I recut this thread and then put in a piece of bubinga in here and chase that thread again. And now it screws together as well or better than any of them I've ever made. And what's interesting about it, most threads, when you tighten them, they get tighter, 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 and then they never really quit. They could never peter out. But this one has a real nice positive stop right there where the chainsaw cut was, and cracks in the wood. It's nice. I haven't put a finish on it yet.
Well, I'm brand new to wood turning, and I'm brand new to the club. This was my first project, and I call it it's a 10-foot project. From 10 feet away, it looks pretty good. But the good news is there was no blood let. Still got all my fingers, and I had a lot of fun with it. It came right off of YouTube, and I did a second set that turned out much better because I learned from my mistakes.
Well, I too had saw somebody on YouTube the other day because it was the holidays and they were making a whole bunch of little candle holders that would hold votive like this. So last week in the shop, I was actually looking in the baseball bat cutoffs, and there were 2 just round pieces of wood in there. So this is one of them that I turned just to fit a votive. I actually turned 2 different ones. This is a salt box with a hinged lid. And I've seen them made, and I've heard people here talk about making them where they actually put the pin through the bottom up here, and you never see the pin in the lid. But there's somebody that I watch on YouTube, and he just uses a brass screw. So I've made a couple of these. My wife has claimed several of them. So that's what mine were. Thank you.
So I watched a demonstration by Joaquin Vincent at SWAT. He had a offset chuck that he made and had plans for. And so I made the chuck and I scaled this down. This was my prototype. I just wanted to see if I could make it. So I glued 2 2x4s together and put them on there and offset it, and darn, I liked it. So, but I didn't like the seam, so I painted it white. So you offset, it's offset 3/4 of an inch to turn the head and the neck. And then you go back to center and turn the rest of the body. So I thought it turned out pretty good. I've got a bigger piece of wood. I'm going to make a bigger one. So, pardon me? Oh, it's a sandhill crane.
Well, at the Kansas City Symposium, I think it was Rudy Lopez made some crotch bowls. Well, I didn't have any decent pieces of crotch, so I just made it out of a log. Well, the bowl part of it's pretty tiny unless you flip it over, and then it's a little different. And then another guy that demonstrated there was Jim Sansrud. He made bowls like this. So I tried that and tried to leave as much as the sapwood on that walnut as I could. It kind of looks like a hurricane, but hurricanes are in right now, I guess.
So I don't remember if I've showed these here or not. I took a class with Matt Monaco a couple of years ago and got really inspired to work on these forms, these interior shapes, and only doing them with gouges. And I've done a demo here kind of about how those gouges kind of work to do those shapes. So both these were done. Well, this one was done entirely with gouges. No, this one used a hollowing tool. I just remember that. But the thing that really inspired these is a guy named Liam Flynn, who was an Irishman. He passed away a few years ago. And you can find him on YouTube. There's like 2 videos of him. They're not demonstrations. They are just him working. And I would watch them over and over and just kind of see what he was doing. And I'd encourage you to check out his actual pieces online. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. But he makes these rims where there's multiple, kind of 2 rims. There's an exterior rim you see on the outside. And as you get closer, you find there's an actual interior rim to it. So I was attempting to kind of do that. And these are kind of some experiments. And I made a number of other ones, some larger ones, but these are the only ones that fit in my bag. This is actually one of the first ones I did. And I use a narrow parting tool to cut this little indention right here. And then I carved the rim. And then on this one, I actually used a very teeny tiny hollowing tool to get around the corner there. And it's a much wider gap than I wanted it to be. But they're fun little pieces to make. And then the other cool thing that I like to do is try to sand them while they're still wet. So when you pick them up, there's this like really nice texture to it. And I buff it out once it's dry, but I try to do the initial sanding while it's wet. So especially on like this maple, you can just feel this texture from as the wood dries. It creates this really cool effect. So it's kind of a combination of Matt Monaco and Liam Flynn.
Bring them all. Right? No. I'm already partnered. That's it. I get ideas from lots of places, and I don't necessarily try to duplicate things. I just take, like for instance, this box here. I originally saw this 20 years ago. I don't know. And it was a picture of an object in amongst a bunch of other objects on a table. And what it was a trivet. And so it's a relatively flat piece of wood with a bunch of big rings in the top. And then you look at the bottom and it had 3 sets of smaller rings. And so what I did was, you see it? No. At any rate, it cut one set of rings halfway through, flip it over and turn it eccentrically and turn the other set halfway through. Oh, will it work now, you think? No, you gotta have light through it. There you go. Moyer, is that what they call that? At any rate, I did a few demos of that. And I think I made these before. I don't know if I made these before or after I saw Weislog. He does something kind of sort of like it. But it's the trivet where I got that original idea. Here's something else. Weislog. So I'd been making spherical boxes. First spherical box I ever made, I saw Stuart Batty make it. And so I made lots of them. This was a piece that I got from a demo I made it a demo in SWAT. It's a brass ring instead of being a captive ring like Weislog does. I actually made one that way at the Northland used to have a woodturning symposium 3 years running or something. I don't remember exactly how long. And so at that, I made one with a captive ring, but I mean, it's too close to what someone else had made. So I only made one. It's all right. And so one of the things about this is I'm doing this in front of the SWAT group and I'm cutting this brass and it's hot when it comes off the lathe and it's real hard on your sandals. The first chess piece I ever saw made was by Bill Jones. And after he made that for, I don't know, a couple of years, every time at the tool show, I would make a big pawn. And they were same way out of 4 pieces. The first one I ever made was a cane. And so it has 5 pieces. It also has a cross on top. And I took it, I was pretty happy with it. And I took it to Provo, which is where he and Batty were all the time. And so the thread was about 45 minutes long. By that, I mean, that's how long you had to screw on it before it would seat. But it was otherwise, it was nice. The stand is, Mr. Darter said, okay, Anthony, you have to go make stands. We're going to make stands for next week. And so that was one of the stands I made. This is not exactly correct, but this, my grandfather and my grandmother on it had an old walnut place where you kept kumitori. What do you call that? The chamber pot. They had a cabinet that would have had a chamber pot in it, and on top of it sat 2 boxes that my grandfather had made during high school. And so this is not intended as a faithful representation of it, but it's what I remember from the box. And so they're real square. They have a little bit of detail on them, but they're clearly designed to put things in. I mean, they're not, some of the boxes I make, you can't put anything in. These are Warpies. Warpies, it turns out, there's a guy named Firmiger, and he is, he lives, I think he's still alive. He lives on the coastal islands off of Britain. And he actually made a parting tool. It's called the Firmiger parting tool. That's how I found his name. He tends to make things that are more tree-like. They only have 3 or 4 of these layers on them, and they're widely separated. The only thing I saw an article from it about 15 years ago, and the only thing I remember about the article was he said, "Oh, they're real hard to sand," and so I just put mine real close together, and I don't have to sand them, and so that's a good thing. Elm is wonderful. Microwaves work real well unless you leave it in the microwave a hair too long. And you get in trouble for that if you do it here at the Woodworkers Guild. These are last week when they said, well, we're going to make something that you have seen somewhere and inspires you. So Don Frank was showing me some stuff on his phone of a guy who had made a video at the SWAT that had happened, at the beginning of or in September or something. And they don't look quite like this, but they're the same basic idea. They have this central tube here. And what this is a bowl turned, cut in half, and then glued together. You can't thread it because it's rather ungainly. And so what I did was put a little collar on it and chase my thread to go in that. And it looks like you can do you could probably do almost anything with this arrangement. Well, some of he has these closer together, and he puts an extra little box in between. It's kind of shaped like an hourglass. And so it's held in by these 2. Yeah. 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 It's fun. It's fun to learn to chase threads and different things. And so this is an interrupted surface. An interrupted surface you have to cut the thread in. And you just have to be a little more careful is all. What I call this one is a binoculars for an introspective person. That's it. That's all I got. Well, the way that started out was I microwaved them for about 20 or 30 seconds a piece. And I was in the process of doing that and you know, getting them out and waving around for a while and put it back in. And Jerry Darter grabbed a hold of my arm and said, "Damn it, Anthony." And so he set it, or he made me set it for 5 or 10 minutes or something, and it worked. So.
Okay, this is a bowl from the 2017 Kansas City Symposium. And the outside was done by Jim Sannerud. And here's a little book that he had left. And he had studied in Sweden. And so when he had done his bowls, I did the inside, he would make marks on them, I guess just kind of a decorative on the bottom. And I think his session was on decorative markings. He had a special tool that was made in Sweden when he studied there. I did not have one, although this was made in Sweden. So I used my hook knife and made little things in it. It's a dash dot dash dot. And when I looked on Google, it said, oh, that means I love you. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting, because I didn't really know that I had done that. And then I got to looking further along, and yeah, it wasn't really, it was just, you know, an MS and something else. I can't remember on Morse code, right? So, but it did make kind of nice little things like this if you did it this way, although you have to use the hook knife like that. But anyway, I was happy with the ways that it turned out. Oh wait, I didn't get one. I will get one. Sorry. Yeah, put one in minutes. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Use the mic. Use the mic.
Let's see. Okay, well, that gets us through our challenge table. Thanks to everybody who participated and brought their stuff up to show and tell today. And we'll move on to the show and tell table. So we've only got a few items on there. We should get through this pretty quick. But Rick, do you got something there on the show and tell table? Dawn, you do. I want to see that and have you talk about it.
Occasionally I see a photograph that gets me in trouble because I can't leave it alone. And I subscribe to some forums, you know, on Facebook and stuff that are pottery related, just to get some ideas on form. And a lot of them are shapes that you can't do on a lathe or anything. And I saw, let's see, how do we do this? I don't know that that's going to even show. But anyway, I saw a coffee cup on there that was similar in design to this. And I kept looking at it over the course of several weeks, trying to decide how to turn it on the lathe. And the coffee cup, the base was closer in here, and there was less space between the handle and the coffee cup, which wouldn't have worked very well for trying to turn it. But after pondering it for a while, I decided what to do and how to try to attack it. And so this is what it ends up looking like before it's all cut apart. So what I do, I've done 3 of these so far. Anthony and Mike came up one day, and Anthony turned one of them. And so you'll be seeing that at some point. They're turned between centers. I put a chuck on the end that is going to be a screw chuck on the end that's going to be the cup, turn a tenon on the bottom side here, and then it gets hollowed from the inside here. And the obvious problem with that is that as coming in initially is no problem. As you start to hollow into the side, you get halfway down and it's no problem. Getting all the way up in the very top of it is kind of a problem. And so I started turning them in reverse to get that second side because it worked with an arc of the tool where I could come up this way. When Anthony was up there, he's brighter than I am and a lot more experienced, and he just simply flipped we were using a John Jordan curved hollowing tool, and he simply just flipped the cutter upside down to allow it to, have the right arc. So he didn't have to turn his in reverse. But anyway, they are still a challenge to turn, and but they are a lot of fun. And so I'm going to experiment a little bit more with the inside form and the outside form. And so from there, it's just simply cut apart to expose the center. And then there's a fair amount of sanding because you're kind of limited on how clean you can get the shaft of the coffee cup. But anyway, it was a fun little project. This is something we did several years ago, the basket illusion. And my daughter came back and said she wanted one for a friend for a graduation present. So I like the Hopi designs and stuff like that. And it was like revisiting something I hadn't done in a long time.
So this is just a real simple bowl, but it's made out of the wood that Don cut up for us. What was it, a couple months ago? So graciously shared his wood with us, but also showed us how he worked his saw out there. And so this is made out of the ash wood that you gave us. So thank you.
I too have taken advantage of Don Frank's woods. I've purchased a few of the blanks back there and turned some bowls out of that, a couple of cherry bowls. This one, as you can see, I went through the bottom of it and had to create a plug out of Coca-Cola to put in it. I also realized with as much tear out as I ended up on two sides that I didn't follow Phil's direction that he gave us on the calabash bowl and the kind of tool you needed to get that inside curve. I just kind of went at it with what I had. This is another piece of the cherry that I just love the chatoyance and everything that was going through the wood. Did have one minor crack there at a grain line. And so I took a Dremel tool actually with a disc cutoff and just ground lines down into it, and then took some veneer and filled the lines in with the veneer, cut the veneer into a circular shape, and then stuffed them in there like a wedge. And then the ends didn't look great, so I decided to drill some holes and finish them off with little dowels. And ultimately, I liked the way it ended up. I had never done any kind of patchwork like that, so that was fun. This was a piece of persimmon. And Don told me right off the bat, he goes, "Chris, get to that fast because that stuff likes to crack." So I was really excited about it. And I did take it home the night that I purchased it. And like 2 days later, I looked at it and it was starting to check crack pretty bad. And so I brought it in as soon as I could and rough turned the bowl, and then spent about 3 months babying it and churning it in the shavings and rotating them and drying it out to the point where I got to the second finish turning, and everything was going good, and I was excited, and it hadn't cracked or anything. And I was about to do a last round nose scrape on the bottom of it for shaping, and I heard a pop, and I look over, and it had cracked basically from this point down to this point. But the bowl was finished at that point, so I went home and I put something around the rim to tighten that down, put some glue in there, glued it up, came back with some CA and some ebony shavings and filled the void, and then put a finish. I used the 3-part finish that's kind of like the Watco finish on it, and it darkened it up enough that on the inside the crack almost died away, and on the outside, with the darkness that the wood took, it really isn't near as obnoxious as it was when I started. So ultimately I was pleased with what I ended up with, and just excited to get back into some bowl turning. I'd been doing those baseball bat blanks for so long. It was fun to do something a little bit bigger. But I think that gets us through our show and tell table. We do got to get Elizabeth home tonight. So I wanted to remind anybody still here, grab a dowel, use that, make some tops, bring them in for the challenge next month. And if you are so willing, donate some to towards the Santa's workshop that we're going to do later on this year.